college like anybody else. Your immune system, is part of repair.
Right.
But tell me which immune cells does repair in the body? Your immune system does not make repair.
Join us as we welcome Christian Drapeau, a pioneering stem cell expert and founder of Stemregen. With over 20 years of experience in regenerative medicine, Christian is an expert in unlocking the healing potential of adult stem cells. Get ready to explore the fascinating world of stem cells.
What is neurophysiology to begin with?
Well, the study of the brain, but my main focus was the study of memory and epilepsy. You develop organ failure because you don't have enough power to repair and renew and restore and keep them healthy.
When did Stemregen come to life?
So this product was launched in 2005. We sold probably $400 million of that product over maybe 10 years. People start to really understand that whatever is a problem, just start by boosting your own stem cells.
Why is it important to take a product like Stemregen if you really don't have anything going on?
Sam,
welcome to another episode of A Healthy Point of View podcast. I'm your host, Sam Tejada. And as you guys may already know, we always bring some of the best experts in the medical, health, wellness, and regenerative medicine space. And today we have a special guest. This guest here is an expert in his field, and this is the founder of a product called Stemregen, and it's specifically for stem cells. Christian Drapeau, right? I always want to get the name right. We got Christian Drapeau here, and he has a strong background in say it again?
neurophysiology.
Neurophysiology. All right, Christian, welcome on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
All right. So, Christian, let's talk to all the listeners and viewers. We have tons of doctors here that are listening. What is neurophysiology to begin with?
Well, the study of the brain, but my main focus was the study of memory and epilepsy. And at the time when I was in the lab, that was at the Montreal Neurological Institute, it was electrical recording of neurons, either in the process of memory or the process of epilepsy. It was a cool project. I was able to measure. I had the chance, if I could say, to measure electrical activity in neurons that is coming from the brain of people who had epilepsy. And as they removed the epileptic part of the brain, then I had access to that brain to study how different it was from a normal brain.
Oh, wow.
So anyways, that's the background.
So okay, you go from studying people that are having seizures, right? Mm-hmm. And how did you get into the stem cells?
I mean, it's a long story, but essentially when I stopped doing this, I was hired by a company that was, because my background is brain research, but I also worked a lot on methods of accelerated learning, how to learn fast. Okay. And at some point, I was just asked to go and give a lecture for a company that was selling a blue-green algae from Klamath Lake. Okay. Aphanizomenon flossaqua, AFA. You may have heard of this blue-green algae. Mm-hmm. So, and because of these techniques, if you want, of accelerated learning, I was able to teach the people, give a lecture, getting into quite a bit of science, but make it really easy to understand, easy to absorb. So the company liked it, and they hired me as their scientist. Okay. So the whole adventure started in June 1995 when I was hired by this company at the time called Celtech to study this blue-green algae. And the first step was to go over the main benefits that had been reported over the years. So essentially benefits on inflammation, on the immune system, and on the mind, better concentration, sort of mood elevation. We quickly identified the mechanisms of action, the active compounds. But as I'm doing all of this, I came across people reversing multiple sclerosis, diabetes, heart disease, emphysema, Parkinson, Alzheimer's, liver failure, arthritis.
And you just started seeing these things just
People
happening.
came and they're telling their stories. So at first it's just a story, So it's
you kind of start feeling it's like, maybe I'm lucky.
I mean, then it's 10 stories, then
right.
It's 20, then it's 50, and there's a point. These things start to be compelling. And for me, the real turning point was one day I received a box, and it was a photo album and a letter with it. And in the letter, the woman was describing how when she was 12, she was walking with a kerosene lamp, and she tripped and burned herself in the face, chest, and arm, third degree. Wow. So she was scarred all her life.
Oh, man.
And then at age 60, so roughly 50 years later, she started to take this blue-green algae, and she said the scars started to get inflamed, red, and itchy. But she said, but it felt like healing itchiness.
Wow.
So she kept taking the product. She took a picture of herself every week in the mirror. And the conclusion was go and see the photo album. And as you flip through the photo album, you go from the first picture, she was heavily scarred. And in the last picture, she has no scars left.
Wow. So what caused the healing process?
Well,
of
she
that?
was taking this blue-green algae.
Okay.
That's the only thing. Whatever it was, nobody reversed their scars. So
That's amazing.
So I'm looking at this. It's proof of nothing, but that is something that I could not just brush off and
No, of
just
course
say
not.
it's just a
Yeah.
story.
Right.
The pictures were there. So we started to look at trying to understand what was this plant doing, leading to so many benefits, touching so many different aspects of human health. And in early 2001, I came across an article. The title was Turning Blood into Brain. And it was, to my knowledge, the first article documenting stem cells going from the bone marrow to the brain and becoming a brain cell.
Wow.
So go back in 2001, stem cells are only precursors to blood cells, and your brain does not regenerate. That's what we learned in neurology.
Wow.
And now you see a study showing stem cells going to the brain and becoming a brain cell. I thought it was pretty interesting. So I went to the local medical library to see what else I could find. This was before all the literature was on the internet. And I found one other study documenting stem cells going to the liver and another one going to the heart and becoming liver and heart cells. So then the thought process was, if stem cells can become heart, liver, and brain, then what could be a mechanism that makes them become those three and not the rest? So it has to be that they can become everything. So let's assume that they can become everything in the body, then they have to be the repair system of the body.
Right.
So we published an article in a journal called Medical Hypotheses suggesting that stem cells were the repair system of the body. And in the back of my mind, the idea was, this is something that nobody has ever looked at, so we don't know. But what if that plant can trigger the release of stem cells from the bone marrow? Just like you have plant that stimulates the immune system, that would be a plant that stimulates the repair system. I mean,
Right.
two far-fetched ideas. But it was the only thing during the 4 or 5 years prior to this. It's the only hypothesis that suddenly started to make sense to explain all these cases. So we acquired a flow cytometer, and we started with ourselves. So we took a blood sample, counted stem cells, took this blue-green algae, and then took another blood sample an hour or two later, and then we saw the whole phenomenon.
Really?
So
Wow.
this plant was putting more stem cells in circulation.
So this is back in 1995.
This was in 2001.
2001.
This was in 2001. So
And I
at
want
that
everyone
point-
to kind of like really bring their minds to this. Like when you were talking about how you had to go do some research, and this is not like when computers and internet was freely available. This is you going into the library, some of these big libraries at the universities, or like when you go to New York to the big library, and trying to figure out if someone else has actually done any research or find anything about it. So, and this is the true scientist mentality that people like you have, that bring this type of technology and these type of products to today's world. And people have to understand that. It's like back then it wasn't readily available, this information. So that's amazing.
Not only not really readily available, but quite frankly, for a number of years, it was and you need to understand, I believed in it. I mean, when I started to observe all of this, get into the literature was very thin at the time. There was not a lot of studies, but everything was pointing into that same direction. But the data was not there to be able to convince other people of that certainty. But so at the first we got, every comment that we got from any scientist was that this is an artifact, this is not real, and putting more stem cells in circulation doesn't mean anything. If anything, maybe it's bad for you. So for the next 4 or 5 years, we had to demonstrate the mechanisms of action, the active compound, the proof of concept in an animal model of tissue repair to show that we're able to boost repair. And by the time that we had done all of this, we're probably around 2005. By that time, the literature has moved like exponentially, really documenting that stem cells can become almost anything in the body, the mechanisms of how they are, the repair system, like everything started to be like well defined in the scientific literature, though still unknown to a large extent, but well defined. So, but it was the very early days of stem cell research.
Wow. And then when did Stemregen come to life?
So this product was launched in 2005, this blue-green algae extract. We sold probably $400 million of that product over maybe 10 years. And but as I'm doing all of this, a blue-green algae is not like it's pond scum, in the minds of most people. So a blue-green algae and it was not strong enough. It was a great effect, but it was not strong enough to really penetrate the medical community. I had seen some amazing results. Some of this has been published, like we have reversal of Parkinson, reversal of diabetes, arthritis, heart disease, severe heart disease, consequence of a stroke. All of this was published. But even though this is published and we do get great effects, nobody can consider a blue-green algae on par with what you would consider like a stem cell treatment.
Right.
And my aim was to really put out there, make this approach that I called endogenous stem cell mobilization to be recognized just like another modality, another protocol that really can tap into the regenerative power of stem cells. So to do this, I needed a product that was stronger and scientifically that was more solid. So that's when I started to look at other plants in the world that had been associated over centuries to a broad variety of health benefits, assuming that some of these plants probably, just like AFA, their mechanism of action is that they act as a stem cell mobilizer, but nobody has ever looked at this.
Right.
So the first one that would come to mind would be like medicinal mushroom, goji berries, adaptogens, these kinds of, the definition of an adaptogen is almost something that is good, like whatever is wrong with you, it's going to help it.
Right.
And but we don't really know how. In reality, we don't really know how. For repair, I learned in college, like anybody else, your immune system, is part of repair.
Right.
But tell me which immune cells does repair in the body? Your immune system doesn't make repair. And actually, this is one of the most interesting phenomenon because, to me, from a philosophical standpoint, because every single human being on this planet has experienced that the human body repairs. Everybody has had a broken bone, a cut, a bruise.
And it's supposed to repair itself.
Everybody has experienced it. But in medicine, what repairs? What is that process? It's a black hole. You get a bone fracture, the doctor puts you in a cast, tells you come back in 6 weeks. You get a surgery, the doctor will tell you rest so that you can better repair. Tell me what rest will magically do to make you repair. Rest, among other things, supports the role of stem cells.
You know what's very interesting with what you're talking about right now is, like your body repairing itself, especially like something like broken bone or post-surgery. One thing that I'm starting to see at the conferences, a lot of the biohacking and even the functional medicine conferences, I'm starting to see a lot of the allopathic surgeons show up to be able to offer their patients other type of modalities to help the recovery process post-surgery. Like we just had a conference. Actually, I met one of the guys on your team, Nick, I think his name is. We had the Vibe conference. And at that conference, there was a doctor, a Harvard-trained orthopedic surgeon, that he's not even doing it for the money. He's trying to figure out all these different modalities. So after people have the surgery, the ortho surgery, he utilizes all of these different modalities to help with the recovery process. And he says it's been unbelievable, the recovery process. So these things, you're starting to see more people in the allopathic world, add it to the different treatments that they're doing. Now, one of the things that I want to bring up that I'm very I appreciate what you're doing is that you go, myself and many others go to some of these conferences, and there's sometimes, products where you're going to question, like, what is this stuff? Is there any science behind it? And I'll be honest with you. When I was approached with your product, myself and Dr. Davis, we were walking there. Dr. Davis is a researcher himself as an interventional cardiologist. And we were like, what is this? And the guy, I forgot his name. He plays the guitar. He's part of your team.
Mike.
I think Mike, yes. Mike, cool guy, man. Great energy. And he says, no. You need to come talk to Christian. He says, all right, let's go talk to Christian. And you just had studies after studies. And most importantly, with Dr. Davis, who's an interventional cardiologist, you had a study on the heart,
Correct.
On cardiovascular health.
Correct.
And you guys spent almost like an hour talking. It was an extensive period of time. And afterwards, I told Dr. Davis, I says, what do you think? He says, this is the real deal. And I was like, man, this is what companies need to do when they have a product. They have to have the research to back it up, which you do. So now let's talk more about the product, about what's in the product. I know it's plant-based, which
Correct.
Everybody, obviously anyone who's a health enthusiast without being a scientist or a medical professional knows that plant-based is the way to go with most things that you're going to consume. So let's talk about what's in the product.
So we showed that this blue green algae was putting more stem cells in circulation. I'm wanting a product that is more complete, that will be stronger. So we start to study many plants, and where we got the real jackpot, if you want, is when I had a chance to go with a team of pharmacists that had traveled the world to find plants for neurodegenerative diseases. And I just asked them, have you come across, when you're talking to these healers in Papua New Guinea, in the Congos, on the Tibetan Plateau, in Madagascar, South America, a healer that will tell you, take this plant, it's good for everything.
Really?
And they laughed because nothing is good for everything.
So they're just like meeting people like in the rainforest or in the jungle, like shamans and stuff.
Yes, what this woman did is
amazing.
amazing, and it's a little bit out there. Like there's a few documentaries out there of what she did, but it should be much bigger. So she would go for like 4, 6. I think her biggest trek was 8 weeks. 8 weeks with 3 camera guys in the Congos. And they go in the deep jungle, and then they speak to the healers.
That's amazing.
And then they film everything, and they collect all this information. So the question was like, is there something that the healer told you that this is good for everything? There's a number of them that are very interesting. Over the years, we can go back. There's a plant in Papua New Guinea, for example, that apparently she was saying this like almost like joking, but no, she was still, if there's nothing else we can do, this one will bring people from death.
Really?
So I would like to study that. That was
amazing.
a bark of a tree. But of those that were right there available, she said in Madagascar, on her last trip, the translator and guide stopped at a small market and told her, this is what you need to study. And you scoop a whole bag of these black beads. It looks like a black pea. And says, study that. What do you do as a scientist if you're told to study that?
Well, you got to study it, I would assume, right?
But what do you test it for?
Oh, that's a good question.
What do you test it for? So study that. She took the bag, but it was in her freezer for 5 years. So she sent me some of those beads. So we took a blood sample on ourselves, took those beads, took another blood sample 2-3 hours later, and we saw the biggest increase in stem cells in circulation that we have seen so far.
Wow.
So then we asked, what was it? So you see, we're not that curious. We tested it, I think, not knowing what it was. And it's, of all the species of aloe in Madagascar, there's only one that has been used to make a product called Vahona over centuries. Vahona. And it's used for all kinds of health issues, to heal, to keep like older men, like 70, 80 years old, to still work in the field. So they use Vahona. But it's not available large scale. So we had to develop a network of harvesters. It's on the CITES list, so it's not endangered, but it's protected.
Okay.
So we cannot touch it. So we had to really work with Malagasy people. We had to evaluate the population of that aloe around Antananarivo in collaboration with the University of Antananarivo. Then after that, we had to develop a system of propagation. So we have planted, John, my partner there in Madagascar, has planted over 100,000 plants back in the wild. Wow. So it was a huge organization to just be able to use that ingredient. So it's one of the ingredients in Stemregen. And so that's the story of almost all those ingredients discovered.
How many
one
ingredients?
By one. So there's the blue-green algae, there's aloe macroclada, there's sea buckthorn berry from the Tibetan Plateau, there's seaweed extract from Patagonia. So all of these are wild ingredient, not cultivated, purely harvested from the wild.
Okay.
And then we have Panax notogensin from China. So these are the 5 top plants that we have documented act as stem cell mobilizers.
That's amazing, man. And when you start talking about like plants and the seeds and fruits and this, it reminds me of like me. So I was born in Dominican Republic, right? And both my grandmothers, when you were feeling sick, there was no Robitussin or taking this pill. They made the home remedy based off of different herbs and plants and fruits. And, they're just going out to the garden, grabbing things. They boil it or whatever it is that they're doing, and they heal you with it. So, a lot of people start calling it snake oil, but it works. So now we're taking it a step above that, right? Where now there's science behind it. So with this product specifically here, how is it put together into those capsules? Is it being freeze dried, or like how do you do it to maintain?
All the ingredients are kind of processed in slightly different ways, but a lot of these, like for the allomacroclada, we use an adapted system from what was called before refractance window drying. So it's a very unique type of drying, but it's the drying that gives you the highest flavor quality, for example.
Okay.
It's not a flavor,
Right.
but they use it for flavors just because it keeps like everything intact in the product. So that's what is used for the aloe. Some other products are freeze dried. Some other products less sensitive to heat are sometimes spray dried. So they're dried, and then all the blending and encapsulation is done in Dallas.
Okay, so everything's done in Dallas.
Everything's done in Dallas, and in a pharmaceutically certified facility.
Nice, nice. So, I started taking the product when you guys first gave me a sample of it, which was just one product.
Mm-hmm.
And then today, now you have a series of
Correct.
different products that basically, have different benefits to
Mm-hmm.
it. So first I want to talk about the version 1, what you guys came up with, and then why was there a shift? Obviously, we know it's to make things better, but let's talk about a little bit of the history of what's been going on.
So the very first version of Stemregen was in 2016. And so I started to basically share it with contacts that I had in different parts of the world just to get feedback.
Okay.
So this process of R&D, partly in Malaysia, partly in the Middle East, took about like 2-3 years. By 2019, we had modified the formula, and then this was launched in Turkey, in Malaysia, different parts of the world again where I had contacts, and it was launched in the U.S. in 2021. 2020, really the marketing of the product started in 2021, so it's fairly recent on the marketplace.
Wow.
So we launched Stemregen, and we tried to really penetrate sports, athletes. So we had
Okay.
a lot of demands because one place where you can really see your stem cells at work is go to the gym, wreck yourself, like do something that the day after you can barely walk,
Right.
and then 2 capsules of Stemregen right after, 2 capsules before you go to bed, and 2 when you get up in the morning. And you will see in yourself what your stem cells can do for repair.
Yeah.
So as we started to share it like this, and a lot of athletes started to use the product, now you come to professional athletes, and they won't touch a product if it's not certified by NSF.
Right.
And that is where we had to change the product for the simple reason that colostrum is part of the product, highly fractionated colostrum. Because as we study all these plants, they're all releasing stem cells. But as we're studying medicinal mushroom, goji berry, those kinds of products, we see a drop in the number of stem cells in circulation. And after a few months of work, we realized that what is happening is that these polysaccharides increase on the surface of stem cells the density of the receptor that stem cell use to listen to the cytokine released by injured tissue to attract them to that tissue.
Okay.
So that means they move out of the blood more effectively. So they disappear from the bloodstream.
Right.
So I started to think, well, if what we want is put more stem cells in the tissue, which is where they do their work, and I come across plants that stimulate the process of migration, then let's combine those. So I have the mobilizers, putting more stem cells in circulation, and then the migrators that will make stem cells migrate. And then immediately, so that's some of the changes that took place in that second formulation. Then the doctors immediately saw that their patients were doing better.
Doing better,
It. So
yeah.
the highly fractionated colostrum contains naturally some amount, it's not big, but some amount of insulin growth factor, which is on the WADA list. It's a doping
Right.
agent.
Yeah. Yep.
So because it's in colostrum, NSF will not certify a product that contains colostrum. You have no problem. Like you'll never test positive for insulin growth factor by taking Stemregen.
Yeah.
But because of that, then we had to just change that ingredient. So now we have a formula for sports, for athletes. So it's Stemregen Sport. And that one, we have changed colostrum for pterostilbene.
Okay.
Which has been documented to support stem cell proliferation in the tissue and their differentiation into bone, ligament, tendon, muscles. So it's a perfect ingredient to add to the whole mix,
Right.
for athletes for repair. Over the years, it comes that we have, like the product has a really high rate, if you want, of success or let's say satisfaction. So I would say maybe 75% of the people taking Stemregen will see benefit in their life. But it's not everyone, it's not all the time that people see like the full benefit that we would expect.
Right.
So the question is why? Because your stem cells do their job. If your stem cells did not work, you would not be alive today at any time in your life. So your stem cells are at work. What diminishes their work? what mitigates their ability to fully do the role of their job of repair. And there are two main things. Number
What's that?
one, systemic inflammation.
Okay.
It's noise for stem cells. So the signal that attracts them
Which
to
most of us live in inflammation.
Exactly.
Especially with everything, the environments we're in,
Correct.
the toxic world. So
and when it leaks and it becomes systemic, that means the signal that is meant to be a localized signal to attract stem cells becomes systemic, and it's everywhere where stem cells are in your main blood circulation.
Right.
So they become numbed, and it really reduces their ability to identify where to go and migrate. So we came up with the product Signal. So it's basically a number of plants that are going to address inflammation through various pathways. So inhibition of COX-2, 5-LOX. We have bromelain to digest existing inflammatory cytokines, the synthesis of other types of cytokines. So the product is complex, but it's touching inflammation from all its sides. And we call it Signal because the claim or the message around the product is that you reduce all this bag signaling, and we basically optimize what we call your signal to noise ratio. We remove the noise and we make the signal so much more obvious for stem cells. And the other thing that can suppress stem cells from going where they need to go is poor microcirculation. If you've got something chronic, but you're releasing stem cells every day, why is it chronic? Why is it that problem is not repairing? And a lot of the time, the problem being chronic develop local chronic inflammation, and it basically damages your local microcirculation. A stem cell can be 20 micron, but a capillary is 12 micron. So there's a lot of things that must align for a stem cells to really be able to go into the capillary, which is the only place where it can migrate and go into the tissues.
Right.
So-
So how is it fixing the circulation issue?
So we have a product we're using nattokinase. So it makes your blood more fluid, so you can entrain stem cells more effectively in small capillaries. We have nitric oxide producers that will dilate the capillaries. We have bioflavonoids, a whole range of bioflavonoids in plants like gotu kola, ginkgo biloba, documented to help the structure of capillaries. Wow. And then we have the polysaccharide that help rebuild the glycocalyx, which is the lining at the surface of capillaries that helps stem cells, the health of capillaries, but also stem cells to circulate in capillaries.
That's amazing, man.
So you take those three, and then suddenly, within the same time frame of about, let's say, 2 hours, you will get inflammation starting to normalize in the blood. You will have your stem cells circulating, and you open your capillaries to give access to these stem cells.
Wow. And you have the data to actually show that this is working.
Right now, we are going to get into the data on measuring capillary flow, doing a study on inflammation, but I'm using ingredients that have like tons of documentation in the scientific literature for what they're doing. You take curcumin, for example, widely documented for its effect. Andrographis, widely documented for its effect on arthritis. So all these ingredients have that kind of documentation.
That's amazing, man. That's amazing what you guys are doing here with the product. So is the main focus more of the people that are doing physical activity, like the athletes? Because I know there's many other benefits for cardiovascular function and everything else. Now, me personally, when I started taking the product, the first thing, like Mike asked me, oh, well, do you have any pain anywhere? Are you dealing with any issues? I said, no, I don't have anything. So I started taking the product, and I told myself, I said, you know what? I want to see how I feel if I start pushing myself extra hard at the gym, right? Because I know how I feel when I work out too hard at the gym. I get sore and stuff. And I started seeing a difference, right? So from then, this was the biohacker down in Miami when I first started taking it. So I've been taking it nonstop since then. It's almost been a year, and I don't plan on stopping.
So you're right. We're approaching athletes not because it was not our first focus. It became a focus because it is the fastest way for anybody to see what their stem cells can do. Because the moment you start to release stem cells, they go everywhere. They don't necessarily do what you want them to see. If you don't really push your body sometimes, you don't see the effect right away. You release them, we've tested that, and stem cells will help you repair. This is what they do. But if you give that to an athlete or somebody who goes to the gym and does exactly what you're doing, now they can see it in their life. So now it's easy to understand, okay, this is what my stem cells are doing, but if they go and repair my liver, I won't necessarily feel it.
You won't feel it.
If they go and repair my pancreas, I won't necessarily feel it. So it gives an understanding of what they do in the body. But for me, what we're doing, for me, in 2001, when the whole concept kind of dawned on me, and I thought, gee, stem cells are the repair system of the body. I have a plant that can put more stem cells in circulation. And at that time, honestly, the thought that I had was, man, we're putting an end to disease. That's what I thought. And all I can say is that the data that is now over the next 20 years has only solidified that understanding. We can really change the face of the earth in terms of health, wellness, disease formation, and even practice of medicine. It's your repair system. What do you do when you have a cold? You boost your immune system.
You want to repair what's going on.
So
right?
when something is broken, well, stimulate your repair system.
Right.
So put it that simple. To me, it's obvious. But to show that it really means something to put more stem cells in circulation, we have started now to do a study on the heart, which is the one that you have referred you've referred to a few times. So it's an ongoing study. Now 10 people have gone through the whole protocol so far, and of those 10, so these are people with chronic stable congestive heart failure, ejection fraction less than 45%. The typical experience of an individual like this is that you climb one flight of stairs and then you need to sit down and catch your breath for 5-10 minutes.
Right.
That's sort of the typical experience. So they get on the product, 2 capsules 3 times a day for 6 months, and at the end of 6 months, 10 out of 10 so far have normal heart function. Wow. I was not expecting
That's unbelievable.
I was expecting that extent of benefits.
Amazing.
I was not expecting to have it in 10 out of 10.
10 out of 10.
10 out of 10 so far. So we continue. We will build, I want to build to probably like anywhere between, let's say, 30, 40 patients. So it's a solid study.
right.
And we also have in that study a group just on fat-derived stem cells, adipose-derived stem cells, and another one combination of both. Stem cells and Stemregen, because I want to see how does it compare with stem cells, but also the added benefits of combining both. Because Dr. Garber, with whom I'm doing this study, that's what he has done now for many years, and he sees the benefit clearly. Like if you can afford a stem cell injection, make sure you do Stemregen with it. So that's the hard study.
Hold on. So if you do like a stem cell procedure, which I have a lot of clients that fly out to other countries to do it, this enhances that process.
Correct.
Wow.
Correct.
Okay.
And we've seen it virtually in anybody
even
who will
with
do
exosomes and stuff, when people do the exosomes?
Let's put it this way. You do exosome. What is the role of exosome in the body? It's the language of stem cells.
Right.
If you don't have stem cells to speak to, your exosomes are irrelevant. They won't really do anything. Yeah. But you always have stem cells in your body. So you do get benefits with exosomes.
Right.
If you inject stem cells and there's no exosomes around to stimulate them, they may not do everything that you're expecting them to do. But you have exosomes in your body. Stem cells are talking to each other. Now do both of them together, and that's where you get like the strongest benefits.
Yeah.
So you take Stemregen and you put more stem cells in circulation, and then you inject exosomes. You're going to magnify, the outcome of that procedure. I can only imagine.
So you really got me thinking here, because I'm thinking about some of the services we offer at Liquivita, where we use exosomes, where we use PRP, right? We do facials with PRPs. We'll inject joints with PRP. We'll do exosomes, do the P shots, right? For sexual health, or the O shot for sexual health. I would only assume, and you're the scientist, so you tell me, but that would enhance those processes as well too.
Wow. Of course. When you do an injection in any part of the body, many studies have reported this, you end up with very few stem cells, unless it's inside a joint, that they stay there.
Right.
So what happens is that area suddenly starts to signal. So these stem cells go everywhere, but then that area that is signaling now is starting to attract stem cells to that area. So there's a first diffusion of all your stem cells, and then they remigrate in the area where a repair process has been initiated. So put more of your stem cells in circulation when that has been initiated, and then you will just get better results.
Better results. Yep. So you guys are growing tremendously, man. You guys are really, one of the things that I talk about all the time is like, one of my goals is bringing people in the field, in this industry, collectively together for us to really work together to change the course of medicine. And you can really see results versus the sick care model that we're so stuck in, where people are taking more of that proactive, preventative approach to their health and wellness. And part of that, you said earlier, well, what if somebody doesn't really have something going on? Why would they take the product? You know, and I tell people all the time, it's like, you know, there's sometimes you don't have to be symptomatic, you know, to even have a deficiency or anything else. It's like vitamin D3. You know, if I start giving you D3 because you're deficient, it doesn't mean you're going to feel something the next day. So why is it important to take a product like Stemregen if you really don't have anything going on?
You know, Sam, sometimes I tell people the discovery of stem cells is one of the greatest discoveries in the history of medicine and probably the greatest discovery of our lifetime. But it's not because of the repair, the injections, the great story that we see with various conditions. To me, the reason why it's a discovery that is going to change the way that we understand wellness, disease, and also how we practice medicine is understanding that stem cells are the repair system of the body.
Right.
We experience aging a little bit like the fence in your backyard. Every year, it's a little bit of a decline, and it's slowly going down. This is our experience of aging. But in the body, aging it's not what is happening. So stem cell research has revealed that so from the day you're born, you start losing cells. But they're replaced by stem cells, and you have plenty of stem cells when you're young. So you experience growth, expansion. But your red marrow that you're born with that makes stem cells, very quickly shrinks into fatty marrow, yellow marrow. It's called, the process is called conversion. So your bone marrow converts to fatty marrow that does not make stem cells.
Right.
And by age 30, you've lost 90% of your red marrow, which corresponds to a 90% decline in number of stem cells in circulation. So if you lose cells every day, and I would even say as you age, you probably lose more, wear and tear, inflammation, and everything. So your rate of losing cells accelerates, but your number of stem cells to offset that cellular loss kind of goes down. So there's a point in your 30s where you no longer have enough stem cells to offset that cellular loss, and now you start to accumulate a very, very small deficit in various tissues. And that's when in your 30s you discover, you know what, I'm not Superman anymore.
Right.
Now when I get an injury, it's not like 3-4 days, it's gone. Now it lingers a little bit longer. But at the same time, what we need to understand is that that deficit accumulates in every tissues. You see it by repairing, less effectively, but you don't feel it when it's happening in your liver.
And there's really there's
pancreas.
a domino effect to that as well, too,
Correct.
and it starts to progressively get worse, right? And the problem is that most people they just accept it because it's part of the aging process.
Correct.
But in all reality, we have tools to be able to manage the way we age, which this is part of that.
But you age, my point is you age because you have fewer and fewer stem cells, because when you feel aging, it's organ failure. It may be a partial failure.
Right.
It may be like a small decrease, but it's the function of your organ that are make you feel the process of aging. These organs experience this process because there's not enough stem cells to renew them effectively.
Okay.
So I published that view that the decline in stem cells is actually the fundamental core mechanism or reason why we develop age-related disease. I published this about 10 years ago. And in that paper, I was suggesting there's one way to test for this. Go and count the number of stem cells in the blood of people who have developed any kind of age-related disease. And let's compare that with healthy people of the same age. So there's about 50 studies so far that have been published. So you take people with heart disease, atherosclerosis, hypertension, erectile dysfunction, liver failure, kidney failure, emphysema, Parkinson, Alzheimer's, arthritis, lupus. The list keeps growing. Yeah. All these people have on average 50% or less than the number of stem cells that you find in a healthy person of the same age.
Wow.
So the picture here is that you develop organ failure. I'm using a big word here. By failure, I mean like decline.
Right.
Because you don't have enough power to repair and renew and restore and keep them healthy. So the moment you put more stem cells, let me put it this way. None of those diseases you have when you're 20 or 30. They always come later.
Later. Right.
When you have about half or 1/3 of the number of stem cells that you had when you were 30, which was already only 10% of what you're born with. So my point is that by putting more stem cells in circulation, we move you back on the scale of your ability to repair and renew closer to what you had when you were in your 30s. That's really just that's all that we do.
Right. That's amazing, though. Does this have any effect on the mitochondrial cells?
It does not have an effect that I know of on mitochondria, but it's a good point to bring in because I think I've just started to dig in the scientific literature as to what we can find on this. But I believe that when this work is done, understanding that one stem cell, when it migrates into a tissue, will then amplify. It can become, I mean, it can go through 50 generations. So this is billions of cells. Let's just say it effectively becomes like 1 million cells in the tissue. So think about 1 million cells that has migrated into a tissue.
Right.
And now that's 1 billion cells that you have a few weeks down the road. This process of amplification is probably the greatest metabolic demand of the body for somebody who wants to stay healthy, for anybody as we age. So that means mitochondrial function. It means protection of DNA replication, so resveratrol and those compounds that help for DNA protection. All the nutrients, vitamins, minerals that cells need. Cells needs amino acid.
Right.
All the cells of any tissue are always building around a skeleton, a soft skeleton of collagen. So that means collagen peptides. There's just a lot of things.
there's a
So it's
lot
almost like
there.
everything that you know repairs and help repair. What we did not know is that they're actually the cofactor, the ingredients to support what actually stem cells are doing. They are the real repair system that is happening. The rest is just like assisting the process.
Wow, that's amazing. I want to hear the most incredible story that you've seen with the product.
It's a hard question because if I tell you the most impressive one, you won't believe it.
I'm ready.
I'm telling you it happened. I have it on videos. I've seen the medical records. So this fellow was working on a balcony on the 5th story of a building, and the balcony fell.
Oh, wow.
So he kind of flipped, and then he landed on his feet, and so that means all the joints dislocated, the feet shattered.
It took the whole
And
impact.
the full impact, and then he tumbled and rolled down about 100 feet down a hill. So he's at the bottom of the hill, and his foot is beside his head. I mean, he's destroyed. His organ has pushed through the diaphragm, so his lung are in his abdomen. Everything.
I've seen a lot of people like that.
You've
Through
seen that?
Through my years of working as a fireman.
Did they
you know?
survive?
Oh, I've had people survive
Okay.
and a lot of people not survive.
Yeah. Well, so this fellow is brought to the emergency room, and they reposition 48-hour surgery, I'm told. So they reposition everything. They put a mesh in his abdomen to be able to keep the organ in place. So he's told, you'll be in a wheelchair for at least a year if you walk. You'll be on morphine for quite some time. The pain will be unbearable, and then that's when somebody gave him our product, and make a story short, 3 months later he's piloting his plane.
Really? Wow. Wow.
The speed of recovery, and for
That's
years later, every 6-12 months he had to go and get that mesh readjusted. But you're talking about all of these injuries were repaired. Honestly, somebody would tell me that story, I would not believe it. I've talked about this maybe
But
2-3
you've seen it.
times.
You were there.
Hey,
so,
you asked me for the best,
hey.
the greatest.
And
But-
I love those things, and I see those stories all the time with our physicians, and a lot of people don't believe it.
But
You know,
let
and
me
that's
tell
why I
you
asked it.
one that has been to me. I mean, this is one that pulled a tear when I heard the story. So I'm in Mexico. I just gave a presentation, and this father comes and he started to talk about his daughter, and she had very, very severe vitiligo. So she had all these white spots in her body, in her face, her hands, her arm, her legs, everywhere, and she was very bullied in school. So as he's telling the story of how she was bullied, that's when he started to cry a little bit, and then he asked his daughter. He says, "Okay, pull your sandal." So she removed her sandal, and the only thing that I could see on her body was about the pea size of a white piece of skin. She was relatively dark, so you could clearly see where it was, like a small part of white skin on her body. So she was back in school, and vitiligo was gone.
That's
I cannot
amazing.
tell you it's a treatment for vitiligo. I don't want to say this
but
because
something's happening.
I don't have other
Yeah.
evidence.
Right.
But we know that when you release stem cells, they can become melanocyte stem cells. They will migrate in the skin, and they will restore the skin as a normal skin is.
Right.
So seeing how it has changed some lives like this. That's to me, it's like it's the engine, it's the fuel
It's
to
incredible.
continue to do this.
It's really incredible. Any potential side effects with the product?
There's no side effects that we have ever seen. I mean, this is like 20 some years of doing this. There's no side effects. The few things that has to be known, you can call them side effects if you want, but like people with fibromyalgia, joint issues, it is fairly common, probably like 25% of the people will first come back like a few days later and will tell you, this product is making my pain worse.
Really?
And all I will say is that if you have that experience, great. Keep taking the product.
That means it's working.
Because in 2-3 weeks down the road, then you'll start to really experience some good benefits. Why it happens, I don't know. Is it part of the repair process? Maybe. I don't really have a good explanation for it. I will tell people then reduce the dose. Go to 1 capsule a day. If one is too much, open it, take half a capsule a day. Do this go to the process, but just make it a little bit more softer. And then slowly rebuild back. And normally within 2 weeks, people have, they're fine. And we have in that way like great stories from people like this.
I love that.
So that's one thing that can happen.
Is there any type of individual that shouldn't do it whatsoever at all?
We have said over the years, people who have a disease of the bone marrow don't stimulate your bone marrow. That's what we've said. But over the years, I have never really seen, anybody bringing bad stories. But I have heard doctors sometimes came to tell me maybe I should stop making this warning because they had seen good benefits from some of these patients.
Right.
But again, excess of caution. I will say if you have a problem with your bone marrow, then don't take the product. Don't stimulate the bone marrow. That's really the only thing that I could say. The product could sometimes affect blood coagulation, blood fluidity because of the impact that AFA, the blue-green algae, could have on blood coagulation. Mobilize the product. The product on circulation contains nattokinase. It could affect the ability of the blood to coagulate, but it's not something that we've really heard.
Yeah, interesting. So Christian, one of the things with the product, and I started utilizing it, and I really don't know if I necessarily should be doing this, but I'm seeing results. I started giving it to my dog. My 13-year-old German Shepherd. And when I tell you in the last few months, he's gotten better with his hip issues. So this obviously works on animals as well, too.
Absolutely. I mean, keep in mind, all the studies that are in the scientific literature, they're all done on animals.
Right,
you know?
right. That's
But
true.
no, we've seen this. I mean, even in the past, I've seen this with my horses, my dogs. I've seen it. It really works. So we have developed actually a product for pets. We have a product.
Oh, you
for
have one
horses.
already?
We have it. It's not out, so it's still
Okay.
R&D. But we have one for pets. We have one for horses, and the result is unbelievable. I have a friend of mine. I mean, I could show you the video later on, but she had a 15-year-old dog that she was bringing the dog essentially to be put down because the dog was soiling itself. He could not shake his head, so he could not really get up. So they had to really carry the dog. The dog was really at the end, and so I shipped her a bottle of that product. Hey, give this to your dog and see what it is. And about 2-3 weeks later, she sent me back a video where they're throwing the ball in the yard and the dog is just running and fetching the ball.
Incredible.
And that dog looks like he's white, white beard, but the dog is just like a puppy. And this story is like we have hundreds of those.
The interesting thing is people will probably buy the product for their pets before they even buy it for
Possible.
themselves. Because it's just people love their pets, and those are just like they're your little fur buddies. So I get it, man. So where do you see Stemregen in the next 5 years?
I mean, we're pushing really hard here to grow the recognition of everything that we've talked about. Stem cells are the repair system of the body. When that starts to sink in and people start to really understand that whatever is a problem, just start by boosting your own stem cells. So where I see it with like deep collaboration, like with groups like Liquivida, with medical practice, with doctors. I want to penetrate the medical practices and the medical community so people recognize and more people talk about it. Here's what can happen to your body if you put more stem cells in circulation. And we'll grow with this, but really for me, honestly, where all of this is coming from is that I have seen so many cases. I told you an extraordinary case, but when you've got everything in between.
Right.
Everything in between. You ask me any kind of condition, and you say, do you have somebody who had benefit for this one? I had benefits for everything. And it's easy to understand. You put more stem cells in circulation, they repair. When that sinks in, we can literally change the face of the earth in terms of health, wellness, longevity, health span, healthy aging, all of that. And the society is aging right now. So we need to really find a solution, because those extra 50 years that we have on top of the historical 30 years of lifespan that we've had over tens of thousands of years, that 50 years now we have it today, but it's plagued by issues, health issues, to a large extent because our ability to repair is diminished. So this could really be, like, I wouldn't say the only solution, but one of the main solutions for helping people have, age and really enjoy this extra 50 years that we have.
I see it. I love it, Christian. I want to be part of that journey, help you really get that out there. And we're going to do it. We're going to do it through Liquivita. We're going to do it through the network of physicians that are out there. And we're going to change people's lives, man, because that's what we're in this business for. It's not just about capitalizing on a financial standpoint. It's really to make a difference in people's health and wellness. Where can people find you?
The website is stemregen.co, or you go to Liquivita. They also have all the line of products. And I'm on social media, Stem Cell Christian. I thought many people could not spell Drapeau. So Stem Cell Christian, TikTok, Instagram, I answer a lot of questions.
And we're going to put all the links and tag everybody. Christian, it was a pleasure to have you on the podcast, man. And, I see a lot of great things happening here.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Awesome. Guys, thank you for watching another episode of a Healthy Point of View podcast. Make sure you subscribe, like, follow, share it with all your friends. Make sure you also leave some cool comments. All right, until the next one.